first thing that came to me was the audio tape, which he sent to me in January of 2004. He didn't call me and let me know that he was sending it, but one day I just checked my mail, to pick up my mail, and there was a package from my father. There was no explanation of what was on this tape, so I just put the tape in my cassette recorder, and in it he outlines his knowledge of the conspiracy, which was codenamed the Big Event.
I was a bench warmer on it, and I had a reputation for honesty. I think it's essential to refocus on what this information that I've been providing you, and you alone, by the way, consists of. What is important in the story is that we've backtracked the chain of command up through Cordmeyer and laying the doings at the doorstep of LBJ.
He was sick, and he wrote this out, as you can see by the handwriting, with great difficulty. It's a little hard to read some of it, but at the top here we have the initials LBJ, which of course was a vice president at the time. Below this we have Cordmeyer, who was a CIA officer. Below that we have named David Morales, who was also a CIA, I don't know if he was official CIA, but I'm certainly heard his name before in relation to contract work that he did with the CIA. I think he was a pretty serious guy capable of doing just about anything. And to the right, the next name is Bill Harvey, who was a very flamboyant CIA man, carried around a couple pistols in his belt at all times, was a heavy drinker. And below at the bottom it says French gunman Grassy Knoll.
I mean, you've said now that David Phillips apparently met with Oswald in Mexico City before the assassination. You've said that Bill Harvey may very well have recruited a French or Corsican gunman to shoot. And you've also said that Cordmeyer had a motive in that his wife was having an affair with John F. Kennedy.
I heard from Frank that LBJ had designated Cordmeyer Jr. to undertake a larger organization while keeping it totally secret. I think that LBJ settled on Meyer as an opportunist, Perrin like himself, Perrin, and a man who had very little left to him in life ever since JFK had taken Cord's wife as one of his mistresses, and of course could not number Cordmeyer among JFK's admirers. Quite the contrary.
So now you have 3 CIA officials who had, let's say, the means, motive, and opportunity, or some connection to kill Kennedy.
That's true.
But Johnson, as we all know, was a very corrupt president.
Yeah.
Very capable of doing evil deeds, don't you think? Unquestionably. And if he wanted something done, he may have turned to someone like Bill Harvey,
right,
who was also extremely corrupt, right, and a psycho, basically.
Yeah. Oh yes. I could just visualize Harvey and LBJ forming a kind of a thieves compact between them. Mm-hmm. But I think that LBJ was an opportunist, and if it was not hesitated to get rid of obstacles in his way. I think his later career exemplified that. The vice president had the most to gain.
Yeah.
And he was in a position where he could bring in people like Cordmeyer and others of interest and get their take on different things, and then in turn issue instructions. there was nobody with the leverage that LBJ had. No competitor. He was the vice president, and if he wanted to get rid of the president, then he had ability to do so by corrupting different people in the CIA. And he had to do it with the limitations of CIA because there was no other group that honored, if I could use that term, honored the clandestine limitations the way CIA did. They could do something, turn their back on it, and move on to something else. It was not like a military. There was no accounting in that sense. And we know that LBJ had an unlimited ambition. And we know that he was a corrupt individual. And that the dollar sign was very important to him. As vice president, he didn't have the leverage that a president did or would. And so that was an attractive goal for LBJ. He did not want his career to come to an end as vice president. Who knows about vice presidents? It was very, very important to him that he take advantage, as to the extent that he could, as vice president, because just a few things had to be accomplished. He had to kill Kennedy, have him killed, I should say, and be guilt-free himself. Then he could go on and do what he wanted to do as President of the United States. It was a very tempting and almost a logical move on his part. I keep thinking about Bill Harvey. Call Harvey and say, look, there's some things I want to have done. I mean, Harvey didn't want just an additional CIA salary. He wanted to move on. And LBJ could do that for him if he were president. Right. He couldn't do much for Harvey or anybody as vice president. That was why he used Harvey as the being available and corrupt. It was very easy for even the vice president to start working with Harvey or anybody else. Just say, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. And making sure that they had money that was not their own to do whatever the LBJ wanted to have done. So that when the president was assassinated, the vice president was right there and ready to move along. It doesn't speak well for our democracy at that particular time.
He, in my opinion, had an almost maniacal urge to become president. He regarded JFK as he was, in fact, an obstacle to achieving that. He could have waited for JFK to finish out his term and then undoubtedly a second term. So that would have put the LBJ at the head of a long list of people who were waiting for some change in the executive branch.
Harvey was just a very strange and complicated individual. A lot of people have sort of suggested that he was, that alcohol had taken control of him. First of all, he never should have been put in that position. I don't think that he had a pristine connection with anybody. Always had a gun on him, yeah. Particularly in Rome. Harvey even carried guns into restaurants, and he would pull them out, slap them down on the table to the dismay of other diners, and then he'd settle down to an afternoon of drinking, not eating much, but because he was way overweight, but certainly drinking. He had been a deputy to Angleton, and very deeply involved in counter-espionage activities.
Well, Harvey had written in a memo at one point when he was running the Executive Action Program that he wanted to use Corsicans.
Yeah, wanted to use what?
Corsicans.
Yeah.
As hitmen. Do you think it's possible that when he was in Rome that he might have recruited a Corsican assassin to kill Kennedy?
Yes. It is possible. I mean, it's one thing to set yourself up in splendid isolation, and it's another thing to use that isolation as a tool, right, so that you're not an immediate suspect in the case of a capital crime.
Right, right, because he was in Rome.
Is that understandable?
Yeah,
okay.
Very. My understanding is that Harvey had a very severe clash with Bobby Kennedy around the time of the missile crisis, and that Kennedy basically
I think it was
said,
earlier than that. And he posted an old slogan somewhere in the agency premises that said, the tree of liberty must be nourished by the blood of patriots. And this incensed Bobby Kennedy. And they clashed on that particular point. Seems ridiculous. You would think that Bobby would have embraced that particular philosophy, but he did not. And I guess he figured that Harvey was trying to steal some of the glory of whatever was going on in those days.
During the Cuban Missile Crisis, everything was extremely tense, and suddenly it was discovered that Harvey had sent a team of people into Cuba, and the Kennedys were very concerned that this crisis might explode into nuclear war. And Robert Kennedy particularly was in a rage when he heard that this loose cannon had added a further element of unpredictability to the situation.
Harvey hated the Kennedys. After the Cuban Missile Crisis, he had a confrontation with Bobby Kennedy that virtually ended his career, exiling him to an intelligence station in Rome.
I mean, we had a terrible experience with the ones that were handling it at the time of the missile crisis. They were going to send 60 people into Cuba right during the missile crisis. Nobody knew what they were doing, and we pinned it down to the fellow who was supposed to be in charge, and he said we planned it because the military wanted it done, and I asked the military, and they never heard of it.
Oh my God.
This is the same fellow who put the tunnel under Berlin, and so he was, you remember that tunnel in 1948? They constructed a tunnel under and built it up into the intelligence office of which was a hell of a project. Yeah. But he did that better than he did this. Of course, I was furious because I said you were dealing with people's lives. And the best of the Cubans, and they're the ones that volunteer, and then you're going to go off with a half-ass operation such as this. We had a meeting at the Pentagon. I never saw him, never seen him since.